Revenge with Karen. The moment I knew the company was rotting from the inside out was when Jack, the founder's son, a man with the emotional depth of a paper towel and the charisma of a broken printer, looked me dead in the eye and said, "We're going in a fresher direction, Sandra. Let's keep it light, yeah. Light." That was his way of telling me I was being fired. No performance review, no private meeting, not even the decency of a sit-down. Just a chirpy buzzword and a limp smile while he tapped his phone, probably Googling how to lead like a disruptor between breaths. After 17 years of keeping this Frankenstein of a department stitched together with duct tape, coffee, and my own sanity, I was handed a banker's box and told to exit quietly so we don't upset Cassidy. Cassidy's 26-year-old daughter who spelled strategy with an I in her onboarding notes, and once asked if the quarterly budget could be a vibe, not a number. She walked in that morning like she owned the building, heels clicking like a countdown, oversized sunglasses still on, iced matcha in one hand, phone in the other. She didn't even glance at me as I carried out my potted plant and framed photo of the 2013 operations team. Last time we hit our KPIs early. No goodbye, no thanks. Just perfume that smelled like influencer desperation and a voice that floated down the hallway. "Let's redo this carpet. It gives sad cubicle energy. By the way, if this saga already has your blood pressure rising, hit that like button and subscribe. Only 3% of folks who listen ever do, and it genuinely helps us keep peeling back corporate chaos like an overripe banana." Anyway, I didn't cry. That came later in my car, when I realized I still had the office VPN logged in on my personal iPad, and no one had thought to revoke it. I laughed so hard, I almost choked on a Tic Tac. Jack called it modernizing leadership. What he really meant was turning over the wheel to a TikTok literate toddler with a superiority complex and no brake pedal. Cassidy didn't even have her own logins at first. She emailed IT from her Gmail, asking how to get into the drivey thing with all the docs. Then she deleted the monthly operations calendar because it made her feel boxed in. Boxed in. This was a woman who thought Outlook was a skincare brand, but I didn't say a word, didn't fight, didn't yell. That would have given them something to write in their exit log. Instead, I nodded, smiled, and walked out the door like I was just heading to lunch. What they didn't know was that, beneath all their shiny dashboards and rebranded Slack channels, this company ran on back alley protocols I built myself, after years of saving their asses from one budget crisis after another. Their whole supply chain reporting system, me, the redundant invoice filter that kept them from getting sued in 2019. Me. Half the workflow templates Cassidy was about to revamp were Frankenstein from Excel sheets I built during a stomach flu in 16. And I knew, deep in the part of my gut that used to believe in loyalty, that this little stunt wasn't just arrogance. It was going to unravel everything. And I was going to watch. Not because I was bitter, because they had no idea what they'd just removed. And worse, what they'd just installed. Cassidy strutted in Monday morning like she'd been cast on The Bachelor, corporate edition. Skin-tight designer slacks, a blazer that had never seen a wrinkle or a real meeting, and sunglasses so big they could have doubled as hurricane shutters. She didn't say good morning. She said, "Okay, first of all, the lighting in here is killing my skin tone. We're getting soft white bulbs stat." By noon, she'd fired 2 team leads I personally trained. Cheryl could catch a payroll discrepancy blindfolded, and Marcus, whose contract templates were tighter than a nun's poker face. Cassidy's reason? Their energy was like legacy. Legacy. That was her go-to word for competence. She walked into the ops meeting, my old Monday war room, and canceled it 5 minutes in. Ops are like kind of a downer. We're pivoting to vibes-based flow. Vibes-based flow. She said it with a straight face while sipping on something green and bubbling. An old colleague texted me during it. "Sandra, it's a shit show. She just asked if we could unsubscribe from audits." I should have laughed. Instead, I reread the message twice, thumb hovering over the keyboard like I could somehow stop the bleeding through emojis. Instead, I sent back, "What did she do with the internal audit trigger I left running?" Minutes later, canceled it, called it paranoid. That audit wasn't just some quarterly checkbox. That was the canary in the damn coal mine. It flagged irregular access to sensitive files. Last time it tripped, we caught a junior exec selling client data to a recruiter for kickbacks and saved the company from a lawsuit that could have gutted us. Now, Cassidy had torched it like it was last season's purse. She rewrote team responsibilities like it was a Mad Lib, made the marketing manager run facilities, HR in charge of IT because they know people. People. Meanwhile, the staff, those poor, poor bastards, were holding it together with brute force and whispered Slack threads. I got screenshots. Screenshots of a vendor invoice she hand-approved for $27,000 in brand alignment services, which turned out to be a spray-tan guy named Devin teaching team synergy workshops via interpretive dance. Sandra, don't interfere. I kept telling myself. You're out. You're done? But the unraveling had a sound. A frequency only long-time survivors of corporate idiocy could hear, like drywall cracking behind cheap paint. Cassidy was smiling in every team photo, holding her phone like a prop, captioning team updates with things like "we slay deadlines," not each other nail polish #girl boss energy, while compliance quietly bled out in the corner. At night, I'd sit with my wine and scroll the messages. Cheryl sent me a photo of the whiteboard Cassidy had scribbled on after her vision sync session. Just 2 words, less rules, spelled exactly like that, with a heart over the E. And I realized then, this wasn't just incompetence. This was gasoline, and Cassidy had brought matches. It started with a typo on a deliverable, 1 decimal in the wrong place, which turned a projected cost saving into a 6-figure loss for a very litigious client. Cassidy called it a branding misunderstanding and said they were pivoting toward transparency. Whatever the hell that meant. Then came the budget bleed. She approved 3 separate design contracts for a rebrand that no one asked for. Spent $9,800 on pastel mouse beds because the old ones gave off depression. The quarterly balance sheet looked like a Jackson Pollock painting in red, but Cassidy wasn't worried. She was floating through chaos like it was a spot. During one particularly gruesome ops meeting, where someone from finance gently pointed out we'd exceeded the software tool's budget by 430%, she snapped her gum and said, "Sometimes you have to go over to glow up. This is our cocoon phase." Meanwhile, a vendor contract we'd had for 5 years, handling back-end security, mind you, expired without renewal. IT flagged it. Cassidy ignored it. "They'll just reach out again if it's important," she said, like it was a missed Tinder match and not a literal gateway to a potential data breach. Then the message came in. From Darren, sweet, terrified Darren, our junior accountant with the social anxiety of a traumatized rabbit. "Sandra, I know I shouldn't, but Cassidy just had me sign off on a payment for a thing I don't think I should have. She said not to worry about codes. But don't we always double verify vendor info? Also, signed a blanket approval form I've never seen before. I'm freaking out." I stared at the message for a full minute. My coffee went cold. I asked for copy. He sent a picture. It wasn't just unusual, it was criminal adjacent. Cassidy had signed off on an unrestricted expense authorization with a forged compliance stamp on a vendor that didn't even exist in our system 6 weeks ago. My fingertips tingled. Not rage, not yet. Just a cold, methodical stillness. This wasn't revenge time. This was documentation time. I opened my cloud archive, began pulling down folders I'd squirreled away over the years, backup logs, invoice patterns, old board reports. If I was going to have to clean up this toddler hurricane, I was going to do it on my terms. But the turning point, the moment my breath actually caught, came during a board presentation. Cassidy stood there in heels taller than her moral compass, flipping through a deck of streamlined operations she claimed to have spearheaded. "Except the charts. I made those. I made them last year. I even recognized the typo in slide 17, tactical misspelled as tactual." She'd recycled my work, slapped her name on it, and fed it to the board like it was fresh-baked insight. One of the board members, Frederick, nodded along. "She's sharp," he muttered. "Sharp." I nearly threw my phone across the kitchen. This wasn't just spiraling anymore. This was an avalanche, and Cassidy was coasting down it in a glittery parka, pretending she invented snow. I pulled up a spreadsheet, opened a new file. Title, Contingencies, and I started typing. Cassidy's assistant, Maya, a competent, no-nonsense powerhouse who could type 90 words per minute and once scheduled an all-hands, a root canal, and an investor brunch within the same hour, vanished on a Thursday. No warning. Oh, goodbye email. Just an autoresponder, effective immediately. I am no longer with the company. A few brave souls checked her desk. Empty. Chair still warm, but drawer cleared out. One post-it note remained, stuck to the monitor. "I don't enable amateurs." By Friday morning, chaos bloomed like mold. A critical software subscription, one I personally negotiated a 5-year discount on, had expired. It was our payroll portal, thing that makes sure people actually get paid. No one noticed until 23 employees got either half checks or no checks at all. HR flooded with angry emails. One guy from warehouse logistics called the CFO and screamed so hard he popped a blood vessel mid-rant. Cassidy, she was on a vision walk. When she returned, late of course, she blamed legacy systems, posted a photo of herself meditating on her office floor with the caption, "In chaos, we realign." Crescent Sparkles, meanwhile, Jack, who should have been overseeing all of this from the CEO's perch, brushed off concerns with the grace of a toddler smearing ketchup on a wall. "She's finding her rhythm," he said in the Monday check-in call, while the finance director held her head in both hands. Let her lead. Let her lead. She was leading like a squirrel in traffic. At home, begun assembling my contingencies doc into something sharper. Outlines, names, patterns, dates, not with the intent to strike, yet just to prepare for the inevitable collapse. But then the call came. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me twitched. Some quiet voice whispering, "Watch this." I picked up. Sandra, Cassidy. Her voice was a brittle whisper like a balloon about to pop. I had a quick question. About like folders, ones that used to be shared on the drive thing. I didn't speak. There were permissions that you had, I think. Because some of the files won't open, like budget stuff and legal compliance things. And do you know anything about encryption settings? I leaned back in my chair. Cassidy, I said, I haven't been with the company in weeks. I know, she said quickly. But you might have, left some things locked. Silence stretched. She didn't know. Didn't know that when I left, I delicately disabled all the bridge systems I'd built over their decaying software stacks. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I just stopped holding it together. Cassidy had walked into a house with termites in the beams and thought repainting the walls would fix it. And now she was hearing the groan of wood giving out. "I'm sure you'll figure it out," I said, syrupy sweet, and hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time. Cassidy was more than incompetent. She was scared. But scared of what, exactly? The cracks were no longer surface. They were structural. And Cassidy, she was about to be buried under the weight of her own pretending. Cassidy called it the reimagining. That's what she named the internal rebrand. Printed it on color-changing mugs, embossed it on those overpriced eco-tote bags no one asked for, and even commissioned a neon sign that said, "We don't pivot, we ascend," to hang over the reception desk. Corporate ruin was a lifestyle brand. The launch party was held at a rooftop bar downtown. Open bar, 3 DJs, and some guy doing corporate tarot readings next to a slider station. I didn't go, obviously, but the pictures leaked. Cassidy wore a sequined blazer that reflected light like a disco ball with commitment issues. She toasted the crowd with a martini and screamed, "To the future." Half the staff checked their bank accounts to see if payroll finally hit. The next morning, 2 clients pulled out. Big ones. One of them, the law firm we'd serviced for 8 years, cited inconsistent deliverables and a decline in professional clarity. The other just said no longer confident in leadership. That same afternoon, legal sent a quiet memo up the chain. A junior paralegal caught a discrepancy in recent filings. Signature Cassidy wasn't authorized to use showed up on a compliance form submitted to a state agency. The worst part? It was mine. Forged. Sloppy, 2 wrong spacing, no baseline shift, used a PDF from 2018 as a template. That was the moment I stopped waiting for the collapse and started building the detonator. I printed everything. Screenshots from Darren, expense reports, Cassidy's fraudulent filings, side-by-sides of her doctored presentations and my originals. I even dug up an old email where I warned Jack, 2 years ago, about what could happen if we didn't formalize vendor verification protocols. And still, Cassidy didn't panic. She stayed late at the office. Lights on until 11 p.m. Staff reported whispers through closed doors, odd calls coming from blocked numbers. IT flagged unusual activity, external drive plugged in, multiple admin folder accesses from Cassidy's terminal. When questioned, she claimed she was reorganizing digital flow. She wasn't flailing. She wasn't even scrambling. She was planning something, and I couldn't tell if it was desperation or precision. My phone buzzed. Another text from Maya, the ex-assistant who had ghosted weeks ago. "Just heard something. You need to be ready. Cassidy's not just reckless. She's intentional." I stared at the message, pulse dead still. Fire wasn't accidental. Cassidy was building it, And somewhere inside that mess, she was shielding something behind the smoke. Whatever it was, this wasn't the end. It was the warm-up. Monday morning broke like any other. Passive-aggressive emails over coffee, a jammed copier, and Cheryl from finance already yelling into her second headset of the day. But by 9:17 a.m., something was off. Cassidy's office, usually lit up like a content creator's bedroom with ring lights and white noise machines, was dark. Her ergonomic chair stood slightly askew, as if someone had left in a hurry. Desk cleared, walls bare, neon ascend sign unplugged and dumped sideways in the trash like a rejected Instagram ad. At 10:02, a facilities guy unlocked her door, expecting to find her napping under the desk again. Not a joke, it happened twice. Instead, all that remained was one item, centered perfectly on the otherwise spotless desk, a plain white envelope, sealed, addressed in looping black ink, Jack. HR received her resignation at 3:07 a.m. Auto time-stamped. No body in the email, just the subject line, effective immediately. Her company laptop, gone. Work phone, factory reset. Even her office keycard had been deactivated remotely by her. She hadn't just left, ghosted the entire building like a pissed-off spirit who finally decided to stop rattling the pipes and burn the whole house down. That morning, I got a text. From Lena, sweet, rule-abiding, utterly overqualified Lena, still stuck in HR purgatory and one of the last people in the office who remembered when this place functioned. You didn't hear this from me. She's gone. Left a letter for Jack. Envelope. Handwritten. HR is panicking. Heard something about financial discrepancies, but no one's talking. Be ready. I didn't reply. I just stared out my kitchen window, mug in hand, watching the condensation slither down the glass like the nervous sweat I imagined trickling down Jack's back. Why vanish now? Why not crash and burn like the rest of them? Unless she wanted the collapse to happen after she left. Unless the resignation was her last move. I opened the contingencies folder, double-checked the backups, made sure the call logs from Cassidy's vision syncs were still saved. Then I waited. I didn't reach out. I didn't speculate, because whatever was in that envelope wasn't just goodbye. It was a match, still warm, and the fuse had just started to hiss. The emergency board meeting was called at 8:30 a.m. sharp. No bagels. No catered fruit tray. Just a silent conference room full of men in starched collars looking like they just collectively wet themselves. Jack arrived late. His tie was loose, his shirt untucked in the back like he'd dressed mid-fall down a staircase. And he wasn't carrying a laptop, just a single envelope, creased, smudged, and opened. The Cassidy letter. He didn't speak at first. Just stood at the head of the table, blinking like someone had forgotten how to human. Then, without preamble, placed the envelope flat and said, "She left this for me." He read it out loud. And by the fourth sentence, the room went stone still. You built a kingdom on manipulation, Jack. You silenced Mom, destroyed her in court, and told the world she was unstable. She wasn't. You were just scared of what she'd say. You gave me this job thinking I'd follow in your footsteps. I did. I lied. I cheated. I forged documents like you taught me. But I wasn't building your legacy. I was digging your grave. Then came the part that made the compliance officer drop her pen. Here are the login credentials to the shared drive. It contains recordings, receipts, and every forged document you buried during the 08 restructuring. This company deserves to see the truth, and you deserve to watch it happen. Attached to the envelope was a flash drive. On it, a video of Jack, hair darker and face less collapsed, coaching a much younger Cassidy on how to doctor quarterly reports to keep investor morale high. The audio was crisp, his voice calm, smug. You don't lie, sweetheart. You adjust. You reframe. You control the narrative. Jack didn't finish reading. He excused himself mid-sentence, the color draining from his face like milk down a sink. He didn't take the letter, didn't even close the folder. Just stumbled out of the room like gravity had changed. That's when Sandra's name came up. Because in the shared drive, painstakingly organized by Cassidy, were backup documents. File histories, metadata trails, audit flags, many of them linked directly to Sandra. She hadn't just known, she'd helped. A board member asked the obvious, was Sandra in on this? The answer came in a second file, a video clip, Cassidy on camera speaking directly to the lens. I didn't do this alone. I couldn't. Only reason this company didn't implode sooner is because Sandra held it together behind the scenes for years. She protected the staff you ignored. She built the systems you took credit for. She warned you over and over, and you replaced her with me. So yeah, we talked. She didn't help me sabotage anything. She just stopped saving you. The room went silent. No one moved. And somewhere, probably pacing in his office or vomiting in a trash can, Jack was beginning to understand something terrifying. The two women he thought he controlled, when he discarded, when he tried to mold, had just dismantled his legacy brick by brick. And they hadn't even raised their voices. Sandra waited until the dust settled, until Jack had slunk out of that boardroom like a balloon losing air, floppy, deflated, vaguely pathetic. She gave it 24 hours, enough time for panic to ferment into desperation. Then she made the call. Board Chair Gregory Nolan. Yale ring, twice divorced, allergic to conflict unless it affected quarterly projections. Gregory, Sandra said, voice steady as concrete, you need someone who understands the architecture of this place. Someone who doesn't need 6 weeks and a LinkedIn crash course to figure out which vendors are real and which ones are Cassidy's fake shell entities. She let the silence do its job. Then added, I can stabilize this company, but only if Jack is out. Fully, no back-channel consulting, no emeritus nonsense. He steps down immediately. Gregory cleared his throat, buying time. Well, Sandra, the board is, let's just say, torn. This is all moving fast, and while Cassidy's confession is compelling, Gregory. She said it gently, but with enough weight to make the pause feel like gravity. You saw the files. We did, and the vote's not there, yet. That's when her inbox pinged. From Cassidy. No subject line, just a link to a final video file. Sandra watched it first, eyes narrowed, breath shallow. Then she forwarded it directly to Gregory, no commentary. Just the file name, Jack side-by-side fake metrics final mauve. The footage was damning. Not just the coaching from Jack, but the moment he laughed when Cassidy asked what would happen if anyone found out. They never do. People don't want truth. They want confidence. Give him a smile and a rising arrow, they'll eat whatever number you serve. By 3:17 p.m., Gregory called her back. They voted, he said, the words brittle in his mouth. And Jack's out. Sandra didn't smile, didn't punch the air or pour a drink. She just closed her laptop, stood up from her kitchen table, and walked to the window. Outside, the street was quiet, unremarkable. Her phone buzzed again. Gregory, we'd like to bring you back. Interim CEO. Have full authority. She stared at the message, pulse even, breath calm. There was no rage left, no bitterness, only purpose. This wasn't revenge, this was reclamation. Sandra had spent 17 years plugging the holes in someone else's sinking ship. Now, she was about to build one of her own. Sandra didn't wear a power suit. She wore the same slate-gray dress she'd worn the day Jack fired her, one she'd folded neatly into a donation bag weeks ago, before pulling it back out, smoothing the wrinkles like it still had something to say. When the elevator doors opened to the top floor, the executive floor, no one greeted her. No one needed to. Cassidy's office was empty, of course, cleared with surgical precision. No glitter pens, no neon signs, no framed quotes about rising and grinding. Even the scent of her overpriced perfume had been air-purged away. No trace, no apology, just silence. Sandra crossed the hall to what was now her office. The chair still bore the plastic from the rushed delivery. The desk had nothing on it but a single laptop, her name already engraved on the login screen. Delaney CEO. She didn't sit. Not yet. Instead, she opened her handbag and pulled out the envelope. Cassidy's letter. She'd kept it, not out of sentiment, out of respect. She reread the line she couldn't forget. You always underestimated the women you couldn't control. It wasn't just a confession. It was a eulogy. For Jack. For everything he built with coercion and charm and spreadsheets full of lies. Sandra folded the letter and slid it back into her bag. Then she walked to the whiteboard mounted behind her desk. The old org chart, names and departments clinging to it like barnacles, waited for instruction. She picked up a dry erase marker. Paused. Then wiped the entire board clean with one long, steady stroke. It squeaked, like something being peeled off, like something being freed. She didn't plan to fail upward. She planned to burn the handbook, rewrite the blueprint, and leave no room in the new design for inherited thrones or empty buzzwords. This wasn't a comeback. This was construction. And what she'd build next wouldn't need saving. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.